Well, at first I was afraid. I was petrified. Kept thinking I could never live without you by my side. But then I spent so many nights just feeling sorry for myself, and I used to cry. But now I hold my head up high. Ladies and gentlemen, class of 99, wear sunscreen. If I could offer you only one tip for the future, sunscreen would be it. The long-term benefits of sunscreen have long been proven by scientists, whereas the rest of my advice has no basis more reliable than my own meandering experience. I will dispense this advice now. Enjoy the power and beauty of your youth. Oh, never mind, you will not understand the power and beauty of your youth until they've faded. But trust me, in 20 years, you'll look back at your photos of yourself and recall in a way you can't grasp now how much possibility lay before you and how fabulous you really looked. You are not as fat as you imagine. Don't worry about the future, or worry, but know that worrying is as effective as trying to solve an algebra equation by chewing bubblegum. The real troubles in your life are apt to bring things that never crossed your worried mind. The kind that blindside you at 4 p.m. on some idle Tuesday. Do one thing every day that scares you. Sing. Don't be reckless with other people's hearts. Don't put up with people who are reckless with yours. Floss. Don't waste your time on jealousy. Sometimes you're ahead, sometimes you're behind. The race is long, and in the end, only with yourself. Remember compliments you receive. Forget the insults. If you succeed doing this, tell me how. Keep your old love letters. Throw away your old bank statements. Stretch. Don't feel guilty if you don't know what you want to do with your life. The most interesting people I know didn't know at 22 what they wanted to do with their lives, and some of the most interesting 40-year-olds I know still don't. Get plenty of calcium. Be kind to your knees. You'll miss them when they're gone. Maybe you'll marry, maybe you won't. Maybe you'll have children, maybe you won't. Maybe you'll divorce at 40. Maybe you'll dance the funky chicken on your 75th wedding anniversary. Whatever you do, don't congratulate yourself too much, or berate yourself either. Your choices are half chance. So are everybody else's. Enjoy your body. Use it every way you can. Don't be afraid of it, or what other people think of it. It's the greatest instrument you'll ever own. Dance. Even if you have nowhere to do it, but in your own living room. Read the directions, even if you don't follow them. Do not read beauty magazines. They will only make you feel ugly. Get to know your parents. You never know when they'll be gone for good. Be nice to your siblings. They're your best link to your past, and the people most likely to stick with you through the future. Understand that friends come and go, but for the precious few you should hold on. Work hard to bridge the gaps in geography and lifestyle, because the older you get, the more you need the people you knew when you were young. Live in New York City once, but leave before it makes you hard. Live in Northern California once, but leave before it makes you soft. You should travel. Accept certain inalienable truths. Prices will rise, politicians will philander, you will get old, and when you do, you'll fantasize that when you were young, prices were reasonable, politicians were noble, and children respected their elders. Respect your elders. Don't expect anyone else to support you. Maybe you have a trust fund, maybe you'll have a wealthy spouse, but you never know when either one might run out. Don't mess too much with your hair, or by the time you're 40, it will look 85. Be careful whose advice you buy, but be patient with those who supply it. Advice is a form of nostalgia. dispensing it as a way of fishing the past from the disposal, wiping it off, painting over the ugly parts, and recycling it for more than it's actually worth. But trust me on the sunscreen, that's a fact. Did you know that it's all about the sunscreen? Let's put that in the right place. What's up, folks? How y'all doing tonight? Welcome to Chilling with Sasquatch. I don't know if you can tell, but we've got this kind of Sam Elliott thing going on. I think I should record some lines, but I don't know who for. What's up, freaking? Good to see you, bud. We got some folks in chat. We're going to go ahead and talk to them people for a second. All the way back to the beginning. I think ATL is going to get it, if I remember right. So ATL came in immediately upon generating this here live stream we got going on, and he gets the gold. Claiborne gets the silver because he came in second, although it was well after we got to talking, and ATL had us a little conversation for a little while. We got Kevin Cox. Kevin Cox has entered the chat. Good to see you, bud. Welcome in. We got Violence is Life. Good to see you. Welcome back. Freaking has showed up. Yeah, hairy butthole will eventually be itchy. That is true. M's Mad World has updated her little chat emblem thingy over here. That's cool. That's neat. Pick me. You a pick me girl? I like pick me girls. They're real easy. Especially like them with the little meat on their bones. They can't run so fast. So before I take you completely off the air, I'm going to move on to my actual plan this evening, which check that out. Isn't that cool? Oh, wait, hold on. I need to check some stuff. We're going to do some sound checks here because I have completely revamped the whole world. I'm going to see what I sound like. I went through and did some fixes and stuff. I'm not really sure. I say fixes. I change things. Anytime you change things, it gets really sketchy, you know? You change little things and it'll have vasty effects. Let's see. Can you hear me breathing? I don't know. Okay, yeah, so if I aim it at the mic, you can hear me breathing. It's not too bad. Let's see what this sounds like.
We are looking at our protocols and procedures, and we are going to ensure that something like this never happens again.
Oh, that's actually way better. That's cool.
I have put a directive to all of our investigators and staff.
All right. Oh, wow. Everything's balanced out a little better. That's way cool. Let's fix that. We're going to do this thing. We'll do that thing. Right. Okay. We'll mute this. Why is it not participating? There we go. All right. So we're going to back this up. Did y'all know that allegedly, right, the state of Florida takes it upon themselves to determine which pets are and are not transferable when it comes to both domestic and exotic pets? So as it seems, allegedly, I'm going to say allegedly a lot on this bit, but allegedly, when they encounter a pet store or a puppy type farm, a puppy mill, if you will, or pretty much anything that involves the housing and treatment of animals, if they show up and decide that they're not being kept properly, allegedly the state of Florida will just wax them. But I've got this video over here that kind of explains it a little better, but there was a couple of months ago when there was this video that made the rounds where the freaking FWC used, I think, a nail gun to dispatch some boa constrictors or something. And some of them were illegally in the country and whatnot and weren't legal to the pet trade, but some of them were. And they just... But we've got a new event that's taking place in Florida, but I know what you're thinking. It is Florida, and you're correct. But That is really weird. What is in the corner? Okay, I see what it is now. All right, I moved a bunch of stuff around. I've changed a whole bunch of settings. I'm not sure exactly what I prefer over here. I like this one. I like that one. That's pretty much the same thing. We can do some of that. Do we have a preference? King Bluto, good to see you, bud. Dennis Bigfoot, welcome. You know everything? Everything. Right? Is it like that? That would be a little scary. I'm not sure I want to know everything. Seems boring to me. I think we're going to roll with this.
We are looking at our protocols and procedures, and we are going to ensure that something like this never happens again. I have put a directive to all of our investigators and staff that we will not be euthanizing any animal.
What on earth? What possesses a person to go, okay, we need to take out some animals? What are we going to use? Well, we could use a sledgehammer. We could use firearms. We could use a euthanasia booth. We could use, scientists have methods of doing it painlessly. You could talk to a vet. You could get some euthanasia drugs, that type of stuff. No, we'll just, my cousin's got this nail gun back here. And, yeah, no, those nails are like 8 cents a piece. So I'm sure he wouldn't mind if we use it. Yeah. Solar powered.
At this point,
staff were able to mobilize an FWC early detection and rapid response volunteer who went out and humanely captured and killed the individual that you see.
One of the deputies turned away because he couldn't watch.
That is a very violent way to end something's life.
This is a rogue.
All right, so keep this in mind. Even if you cut a snake's head off, the body sits there and rides for 8 minutes or so. If it was nailed to the floor, it would, I imagine it'd make a pretty impressive show. I hate to be coarse and vulgar, but.
Department, it is unacceptable.
Okay, it's an isolated incident.
You get to determine what is our pet.
Snakes, a lizard, and a crocodile were removed from a home in Beaver County, Pennsylvania.
So where do you think the line is? This is kind of what we're going in here for. What's up, Bootsy? Good to see you, bud. Okay, so we can all agree that dogs can be dangerous. And so I could kind of understand sort of just having a standard policy of disabling dogs upon sight, but that sounds evil to me, man. I mean, like, dogs be dogs, and I love my dogs, you know. I mean, I don't call my boys my dogs just because I like my boys. I mean, I like my dog more, a little bit more. What's up, Flow State? Welcome back. Good to see you, bud. I hope I didn't offend you when I was drunk the other night. I hear tell I got kind of mouthy with you. I would apologize, but I don't rightly remember what it was I said, and it would be an empty apology, and I don't think either one of us would respect that.
My Lord, a snapping turlock. Wow.
What's up, Angry Rooster? Good to see you, buddy.
Hey guys, welcome back. We're going to get right into the video.
Oh, good. So I drank both of our memories out.
That's awesome. Go down in history as the Holy Thursday Massacre.
Probably had your hangover
perpetrated by Florida's Fish and Wildlife Commission. The reptile community banded together in an unprecedented way leading up to the commission meeting in May. Those who attended and spoke, and those who wrote letters and made phone calls and shared videos from USARC and others, did an incredible job of calling out the FWC for their blatant lies, deception, and killing of pets. While the meeting could have shown more contrition and accountability from FWC, we did defeat the whitelist ban and get one wonderful assurance from the new executive director.
You can always come up and whisper sweet nothings in my ear, and we could spoon later.
Roger Young. And that was that in the wake of these tragic events, that a new directive had been put out to every member of the FWC, that they were no longer to euthanize any animal except in exigent circumstances.
We are looking at our protocols and procedures, and we are going to ensure that something like this never happens again. I have put a...
Why do I have a feeling that suddenly every single event that involves an animal and an officer is going to suddenly become exigent?
a directive to all of our investigators and staff that we will not be euthanizing any animals at this point unless it's in exigent circumstances in the field regarding something else.
Later, when asked by USARK Florida's Daniel Parker what he meant by exigent circumstances, Executive Director Young made it very clear this was reserved for situations in which an animal needed to be put down humanely because it was suffering, had been hit by a car, was on the side of the road, and things like that.
What would those circumstances be?
Side of the road issues with animals that get hit or something like that. So we're not talking about all captive. We're talking about all wildlife. So there's cases where officers have to do that, have no choice for law enforcement purposes.
Most of us saw this and came out of that experience knowing that there was still a conversation to be had and that the fight wasn't over yet. But at least we had gotten that directive, and at least the inhumane killing would stop. That last part, as I know many of you called, was anything but true. The two stories you're about to hear are heartbreaking and infuriating, and one is particularly
All right, so this is the point at which those of you who have especially soft hearts might perhaps possibly not want to continue on too terrible far down this path, because I don't think it shows anything too graphic, if I remember right, but the stories are pretty disappointing. Oh no, is it my I was hoping it was my hetero life partner. What's up, Barbie? Are you gonna leave your camera on? Are you gonna beat up your mic when you come up here? Say yes. Nod at me, say yes. All right. Making sure it was you. What's up? What's happening? You gonna live through it? Is it fun? Is it good? Are we good? You good?
I'm alive.
Oh, good. That's all it really takes. So do you think the state should have a right to just execute animals on site?
No.
What if it's to keep officers safe?
I would have to see that scenario playing out first. To ensure the officer's safety.
Qualified immunity.
If you're not really in danger.
ATL's
if
right.
It's not really in danger.
Both of the situations coming up are pretty. They're pretty disappointing. They don't make me happy to even have to talk about. But it's one of these things where everything that's fixing to happen to these reptiles are regularly done to large, aggressive-looking dogs. Not necessarily aggressive or dangerous dogs, but anything that barks, anything that moves, if there's any type of a warrant served and there's a dog present, there's a high likelihood they'll just cap the dog and move on.
What? Where the fuck is this at?
Texas seems to have allegedly has a standing, if it looks aggressive, just kill it. And there's a couple of stories running around. Yeah, no, there's a couple of stories running around out there of deputies who came to serve papers or something and just shot the dog and left because it was aggressive. In some cases, they were inside a fenced area or whatever. But for whatever reason, the cop.
The Texas police have been having some beef. I thought I'm subscribed to this guy.
What's up, Izzy? All right, so I'm not sure I trust this dude. He's kind of got the soy chin going on for me, but he seems to have valid information. Hey, Judd, welcome back, bud. Good to see you. If Flow State won't come spoon with me, I might spoon with Judd later. He can be the big spoon.
While body cam footage for that does exist and will be linked in the description below, I'm only going to show parts of it here and try to keep out the most graphic aspects. As you listen to these stories, please keep in mind that these officers are not
burner. All right, we've made it.
They are under direct order to carry.
We're absolutely famous. We are YouTube famous. Slow burner is in the chat.
I saw that when I first came.
Order given in understood directive of Roger Young's directive. But for now, just let it sink in.
Joe Cool shows up. I don't know what I'm going to do with myself.
Who are willing to disobey a clear directive from their executive director, as long as it means they can keep killing people's pets. One of these particularly shameful individuals is FWC's Director of Habitat and Species Conservation, Melissa Tucker.
I'm going to have to know. That's why we love Izzy.
both in bringing it to our attention and likely its execution. On August 9th, 2023, 3 short months after the directive was issued, an Orlando, Florida resident noticed something digging underneath their mobile home. This would turn out to be what FWC would call a black-throated monitor. Since then, several people have pointed out that this is actually a white-throat monitor, but nobody is surprised that FWC is still misidentifying the species. The resident then called the FWC.
All right, check it out. Look at this.
I've been asleep for 2 days. What happened? What did you do?
I used to work in a factory where we made windows, and one of the saws and I worked on the saws that cut the jambs to the windows, which are big honking chunks of aluminum. And we got the wrong saw blade on one of the saws, and when I dropped it, it would literally just chop into the aluminum too fast because it was the wrong saw blade, and it embedded pieces of aluminum in my face, my chest, my upper arms, because it took a couple of times for me to prove to the guy that, look, this is wrong. It shouldn't be like this. I've been running this thing for 2 months. It's wrong. And I had like you did it 3 or 4 times. Hold on, did it 3 or 4 times, and then I got a face mask, and then I realized it was the wrong blade, and I changed them out. But now, occasionally, I have these things that pop up right down to here, sometimes in my neck, all over my freaking collar right here, because my shirt was unbuttoned down to here. So I've got these little spots that pop up like. And they itch so bad when they pop up because there's a little piece of aluminum, a little microscopic piece of aluminum in there. And when that pops out, it'll go away and be fine.
Don't that fuck with you? Like, don't it itch?
Yes, no, it itches like crazy. And so in my sleep, I will just about claw my eye out because I am freaking out about it. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm asleep. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been doing shit in my sleep too.
I'm a moron. I can't help it.
Subspecies hotline 888 I've got one, which ironically is the same number advertised for their amnesty and adoption program. But we'll come back to that. The following
no, dude, it pops up every now and then. I've gotten a bunch of them out
early
from over
detection
here.
rapid response
but this one has been there for about 2 years. And it goes away for months and months and months. And then one night, it'll just be like itchy. And I'll wake up having clawed half my eyeball off.
The monitor was captured in what
it's not a
and in violation of the directive. Killed us.
Hey, Scotty, welcome
Neither
in.
Black nor white throat monitors have established populations in Florida. So while non-native, they are not an which means this was somebody's escaped pet. I was shocked to see Melissa Tucker.
Homie, if you're blowing bone shards out of your brain pan, calm down. First of all, that's a bit much. Because if that was true, when you sneeze, you ought to like hit people with bone darts, and that ought to be a special superpower. It's like 225 mile an hour bone flechette from the nose. Sounds dangerous. Yeah, try a magnet. I'm sure that'll work. No, aluminum's not magnetic, bro. But I can tell you this. When I had my MRI done, the very first thing out of that man's mouth is, "What's on your face?" I said aluminum. And he was like, okay.
What was on your face?
It's aluminum. It was little specks that in radiography glow like a freaking nuclear bomb.
There's that much in your face.
It's just a little bit. It's lots of microscopic bits. It's just enough that it shows up. Shows up in x-rays too.
I'm good.
Looks like somebody sprinkled salt on it. It's kind of wild.
Actually understand and reiterate this distinction while speaking at the House Agricultural Conservation and Resiliency Subcommittee just moments before bragging about killing this monitor.
There are more than 500 non-native species that have been reported in Florida, although not all of these are representing a reproducing an established population. There are many non-native species that are present here in the state that are not invasive species. The risk assessments that I described earlier have helped us to identify when a species that's reported is a high priority and to mobilize staff to respond. An example of this occurred in August earlier this year when we received a report through our invasive species hotline from a member of the public. They reported a 4 to 5 foot lizard that was burrowing under their home in Orlando. We then received the photos that you see here and identified this as a black-throated monitor. Monitors are a high priority species for us because we know that they have an impact on our native fish and wildlife. Staff were able to mobilize an FWC early detection and rapid response volunteer who went out and humanely captured and killed the individual that you see.
If you've only just loosely been keeping up or are bad with names as I am, and Melissa Tucker sounds familiar to you but you can't quite place it, let me refresh your memory. Melissa is the one who said this.
No one will need to give up their pet.
Which, as we all know, is something that Commissioner Barreto repeated.
So no one's telling you you have to go get rid of your pet or euthanize it. No one's from the state's going to take it away from you.
She is also the one that pushed for the whitelist, options 1 and 2, essentially ignoring all input from the technical assistance group.
All right.
So now they got lit.
So, well, okay, let me run it by you. They've already, at least legally speaking, should have lists of all the exotic pet owners in the state. Because in order to become an exotic pet owner, you have to apply for a permit. You have to do all the things. Except it's funny, though, because criminals, potheads, meth heads, and freaking coke jobs, they don't seem to abide by the laws. It's the weirdest thing. And so when you're in Florida and you've got a choice between owning an exotic monkey and doing flocka or just doing flocka, apparently they regularly choose the exotic monkey.
And then they just give it flocka and then like wonder why there's monkeys running rampant in Florida on flocka that they can't get a control on. I have no idea.
Never give a monkey flocka. That is a bad idea. I mean, if you
don't
believe me.
Anybody flocka. That's a bad idea. How about don't? How about just no with the flocka?
Not really here. Welcome in. Squatch watchers. I hear they're squatchaholics. That's what Izzy has dubbed us.
Dude, I have been seeing bumper stickers with Sasquatches and their air fresheners. I got them in my car. Everybody in town has them everywhere. Popular.
I snuck up on my old truck and put a I Heart Hairy Nuts sticker on it. I found it in a parking lot. It was like I even went out there with some like glass cleaner and cleaned it up so it'd stick real good.
I would just instantly be like, where is he at? I know that motherfucker is around here somewhere.
Right.
Nobody else
right.
knows.
No. See, the way I busted myself is I didn't realize that the waitress at the Waffle House was his girlfriend. And so my dumb ass showed her my wife's order, and right below it said I stuck a I Heart Hairy Nuts sticker on so-and-so's truck. And she's like, I'm gonna call Alan and tell him what you did to his truck. And I said, cool. Go ahead. I'd like to see the reaction to that. Hairy Nuts. Squatch. We need like a mid-80s cartoon theme song.
And attempting to unilaterally move forward with it.
Species that have been evaluated would maintain the regulatory status quo unless a future risk determination necessitates reclassification. So that's the option that we presented on the slide last time for option 2.
At the last tag, there were interpretation 1 and 2. I just was wondering if there was a reason for that nomenclature change, or if it's going to change at the commission meeting to option instead of interpretation.
Yeah, we will use option for the commissioners.
Is there a reason for that? Or just that's
options?
No reason. Okay.
A move that was fortunately defeated by USARK Florida, and all of you. If anybody watching this doesn't have all of the up-to-date information, I am putting together a playlist. It will be up here of all of my coverage of all of that stuff. The Holy Thursday Massacre, the whitelist.
While it is not over there,
or head over to
the description of the video
to stay up to
you
date.
You can find the link back to his video that does give it in the description of his video.
So we'll come back to that in a little bit. The next story I will do my best to relay calmly, but understand it will be an effort because
this is nightmarish.
It is horrific.
This is what
18 months ago, Palm Coast, Florida resident Michael Hansen came across a dead mother deer on the side of the road. And with her, her newborn baby, who would later be known to all as Baboo. Michael, knowing that this little fawn would certainly die if he didn't help it, decided to bring Baboo home with him. He thought that Baboo would only stay with him a few days and then, when he was strong enough, venture out on his own. But almost a year and a half later, Baboo had become a staple member of the family. That is until October 5th, when his neighbor Newman was reportedly attacked. John had already called FWC on Baboo.
So, quick caveat here. Deer kill more people than bears do a year. They kill more people than bears, wolves, and wolverines combined.
From what, jumping out on the highway?
Well, consider this.
All the time.
Moose or deer?
Time. No, deer. I sneak up on deer. Fucking deer in my backyard all the time.
Stop it. That's dangerous. Don't do it. You ever seen a deer attack on YouTube? Go look up a deer attack. It is one of the most ferocious things you'll ever see. It's amazing.
I've never, those two words have never like even occurred to me in a sentence at the same time, let alone that that's an actual thing.
Oh, bruh. Go look. Yeah, no. I have a great deer story. Sasquatch Tales by Sasquatch. All right, here we go. So you remember the terrible truck that I had that I hated so much that I offered to trade for a dry ham sandwich? All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
In the beginning, it wasn't a terrible truck. It was a decent little truck, and I enjoyed driving it around. It got struck by lightning one day, and then things went weird. But right before it got struck by lightning, I was coming back from my pop's house, and there's this place right in front of one of the neighbors' houses, 2 or 3 miles away by the road. And right across the road, there's about an 8-foot cliff face, right? About 8 or 10 foot tall, flat out to a field right there, like a cornfield. You can almost lean out the freaking window. If your truck's tall enough, you can almost run your fingers along the ends of the corn. It's so close to the road right there. I'm riding along, and this deer falls from the moon onto the hood of my truck. Break dances on the hood for a little while, and it rolls off, lands in my headlights because I hit the brakes and it slid off, hit the ground, and it completely discombobulated my whole grill and hood and everything. Like, didn't really damage anything, but it damaged it cosmetically, right?
Yeah.
So I drive it home. Couple of days later, it won't crank, and it took me almost 5 years to figure out why. Because I always thought it was something the deer had done, and I never could find anything that what it did would have affected anything. It wasn't that. It was the lightning strike about a week before. It somehow fragged out my freaking amp to my radio. It welded that sucker to the firewall, and so every time I hooked up a battery, it was just draining the battery. And for some strange reason, not a single one of the freaking shops around here ever put a voltmeter on the damn thing. Once I got my hands on a voltmeter, it took me exactly 12 minutes to figure out what was wrong and to fix it.
So why did you get rid of the truck after you? Because it was a Chevy, wasn't it?
No, ma'am. It was a 2002 Nissan Frontier 2-wheel drive job, one of the base models. Big crew cab. It was an endless hell.
Before we call it Frontier. Those are rare.
What?
Those Frontiers before they were Frontiers, those 4x4s is like a 4x4. It's an Nissan 4x4.
This was on a 4x4. The Xterra I have is a 4x4. Yeah. The Frontier I sold was a 2-wheel drive base model.
You know what I'm talking about? They had a pickup truck, Nissan did, before they had the Frontier that was just a 4x4.
Yeah, it was like the BF something.
Yeah.
It was like they're called ABSs now. It's the old body style. Yeah,
and they have 4-wheel drive. Some of them have 4-wheel drive. They're super rare. Nissan will buy it back off of you.
Hard pass. I'm going to keep my Xterra. I don't give a damn.
For eating his garden, and body cam footage would later show Mr. Newman returning from urgent care, to which he drove himself with minor cuts and no stitches neither.
Well, yeah, person that was.
What's up, smoking auditor? Good to see you, bud.
How's your legs? Did she say he got you in the legs?
I got like 9 spots. 9 spots.
Did you get any stitches?
I just cleaned it. Just like
Hold on. Not Really Here's actual name is OG Bitchwater.
I was reading on Wicked, so I'm just like, hey.
That's beautiful.
I always thought long. It is a beautiful name. Awesome name.
Okay,
Especially when
suppose
you get
it's
to know her, you're just like, oh my god.
Suppose it's like a mamba or something. Does that change the equation? If you come across like a mamba or a fear de lance or a
Fuck that.
nail gun?
We're out. Now.
Okay. Just checking.
A
strong, even the small one. Strong as hell.
Oh, yeah, he's strong.
He's fighting. He's fighting. He ain't done it.
No. We don't have tranquil.
At that point, you can't do that.
Story I heard on this guy?
They have murked.
Yeah, that's what we're hearing too. He's not far though. He's close.
No, he's about done.
Body cam footage would also show that Flagler County Sheriff's Office Agricultural Deputy Steve Williams, as well as FWC Senior Officer Kurt Harris, both believed that it was most likely that Baboo was just trying to play with Newman when the attack occurred, or that Baboo was crime, but that there was likely nothing wrong with him.
I wouldn't mind having a bar
With
wrestle.
him being seemed like he was very friendly because he wasn't afraid of us. Makes me wonder if he just wasn't wanting to play, not so much attack, but play. But that's the problem, you know. When a deer plays, it's different than me and you playing, you know. Well, he, like I said, he come up to me. We were together, and he come right to the door and sniffed me. So I said, well, he's not, and he didn't like crazy. He acted like he was used to being hand fed.
Not his first time.
No, it's not his first. And you saw he wasn't afraid of us at all. He thought I was playing. Otherwise, you'd never be able to do that. That sucker would have ran me down. He didn't act like he was in a rut. He was laying down in the shade looking at us, wagging his tail, and I called him, and he stood up, followed me down the thing, and put my hand out, and then put his head down, like, you know, I want to play. And I think that's all he did was he was out there, he come up, rubbed on him, wanting to play. I don't think it was a deliberate,
But we sought to do.
Yeah, you still got to do it. Yeah,
I wish we could go for the head.
Yeah.
I know, but I guess they want to test it, see, make sure, you know, I don't think there's anything wrong with them other than being hand fed.
What the fuck is the deer doing in Florida?
What do you mean?
I mean, really? What the fuck is the deer doing in fucking Florida?
Probably Flocka. Some bath salts, a little bit of meth. I don't know. Imagine meth deer.
This one I live
Coming
in the
soon,
mountains.
YouTube channel near you. What was that?
I said, this is why I live in the mountains. I don't understand that beach shit. The way people they just accept all kinds of shit down there. I don't understand it.
I don't know. Why would you? I'm so confused. Why would you think that deer wouldn't go to Florida? Do you think they just have better taste than that? I don't understand.
Why would the deer go to Florida? Like, there's gator down there, bro. Why would you go to Florida? If I was the deer, that's the last fucking place I'm going.
But they live there. Yes, they do. Deer do
They used to live there. Now it's not a very good place for them to live.
Used to live there.
Somebody should send a memo out to the deer population. Hey, Florida's not your place no more.
Is this the same memo that's supposed to tell them where to cross the road at the deer crossing signs? Enough of that.
They probably feed this deer.
The guy came up and said it belongs to the guy at 29 something. He told him, he said, belongs.
What happened in the moments prior to this conversation was anything but humane and ethical. Earlier that day, neighbor John Newman, the man attacked, was out doing some yard work. While he was bent over picking up leaves,
what's up,
Baboo
Joe
came
King?
and knocked him over. When he got up, he pushed Baboo off of him and ended up sustaining a few cuts to his hands and his leg. It was at this point that another neighbor called 911. Newman says it was not him. By the time Flagler County Sheriff's Office had arrived, John had already left to go to the urgent care. As
had a pet raccoon once. Yeah.
See, what the fuck is wrong with you?
With you, I have no fucking clue. You don't have a license. You barely show up to court. You almost never pay your fines. Your ass is still out. If it was me, I'd be in prison. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to call you out. Can we like edit that part out?
I haven't been fined anything yet. Thank you very much.
You're doing good. I'm absolutely impressed and disappointed in our legislature.
Just to be safe.
Oh, he drove himself? Oh, wow. Because I don't get a bunch of clear notes. It sounded like the neighbor was taking them, and then it sounded like they didn't know if he was going or not. And... Oh, absolutely.
All right. When it comes to having a raccoon as a pet, you need to get that thing fixed. No. You need to get that thing fixed within like the first 3 months that you have it. You need to do it as early as possible, because if that male's nuts ever drop, he will come at you like a Mexican with a knife. I am not joking. He will fuck you up. You'll be sitting around one day. He'll be cool as hell. He'll be sitting around, chilling. And he'll turn and look at you and cock his head to the side and give you that you and me motherfucker look. And the next thing you know, you're in a fight for supremacy.
Like, no way.
2 seconds ago, it was cool.
Raccoons, to me, are hairy little primates. I'm not fucking playing with them. Like, I don't got time for that shit. They caught rabies. And even if they don't, I'm not trying to stick with them if they don't. The second they come at me, I'm fucking looking for a gun. I'm putting that shit down.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. You might not be right, but you're not wrong.
Fuck that.
Right?
I'm already bad enough. Can you imagine me with rabies?
To allow him to live out his days in an area where he
have just a little bit more foam around the edge of your mouth.
Williams repeats it multiple times throughout the body cam footage.
He told him, he said, belongs to him. He was going to make an arrangement to have him taken to a farm somewhere because they've been feeding the sucker out here.
Oh, I wouldn't do this thing doesn't just come in someone's backyard.
No, it's been, the lady said it's been staying in some woods over there, but ask him, the guy come up and told us that it belongs to that guy, and I'll tell you who it belongs to. He's been raising this thing and feeding it, and you can tell because he come right up to me back there and sniffed me and everything.
That's why it's that rut. It's probably second rut right now.
That's why this guy
said he was going to try and make arrangements to get him to a farm somewhere or something. Yeah.
Despite all of this, Williams has his directive from FWC, and keeping a deer is illegal in the state of Florida. He pulls out a snare pole, and Baboo walks happily up to him with no idea what's about to happen next.
Yeah.
He allows the deputy to put the noose around his neck, but once it's tightened, he begins to fight to get away. He's then tied to a telephone pole where another officer pulls out a pocket knife and stabs him in the neck. I don't know if any of you hunt or know people who hunt.
I really didn't want to go through that video. I really didn't want to do that to folks. Right? But these are the absolute genius level officers we have working with us, that they think that is an acceptable approach to dispatching an animal, that they didn't have access to an animal control or a vet or the owner for that matter, because while it may be illegal to have a deer as a pet, that's a possibility. Even if it is, there is still someone responsible, and shouldn't that be a discussion at least?
I can't believe he stabbed.
You saw the deer. Did that thing
like that? Like out in the wild when you're hunting, it's one thing. When you're a wildlife control animal and you've got that animal subdued on the ground, you just, excuse me, sir. Like, let me catch you out in the street.
It's absolutely nuts is all I'm saying.
It's a big thing here in New York, and sometimes when shooting and tracking a deer, usually in cases where it's a bad shot, it is sometimes necessary to perform a final fatal act, whether that be another shot or cutting the throat. While I don't hunt personally, I am an avid outdoorsman and I have a lot of friends who do hunt. I'm also in a lot of outdoors groups that involve hunting and fishing. I often ask about it because
This is like very disturbing to me. I'm just like, okay, so how about no? No.
Many moons ago, I was on my way out of town riding with the lady who would later become my wife when a deer jumps out into the road and bam, rams into the car right in front of us and flops over, starts kicking out, and lays out and lays still. And coming from the other direction was a deputy in a cop car, and he turns on his blue lights and stops, and we get out, stand there. The deer appears to be dead. I mean, there doesn't seem to be anything to do, but we're going to give it a minute and make sure before we reach over and grab it and pull it out of the road, right? So we're all just kind of waiting around to see who's going to take the next step. When suddenly the deer goes, it just starts flopping around. And I was like, oh my God, the damn thing's still alive. The deputy looks at the 3 or 4 people standing there in the road and goes, does anybody have any ideas? And I said, earlier that day, I had bought a lighter that looked like a pistol. And I pulled out a cigarette, put it in the corner of my mouth, and I said, I've got an idea. Click. Didn't work. Put it back in my pocket. And that deputy stood there and looked down and just covered his face. Because his second he saw that it was gun shaped, he put his hand on his gun, and then I lit a cigarette with it, stared him down. It was like, I'm an idiot. I'm a moron. I'm an idiot.
All right.
I really don't want to watch the rest of that particular story because
I don't think I can watch that. I can't.
I have a soul.
So
we're going to move on.
Damn wildlife officer in Florida, sir.
Thank you, Danny Staten. Good to see you, bud. Okay, so what do we know about our ancient legends?
How we go from that to this?
Because this is the next video. It is Dead Pets, Oldest God, and Found by Clairvoyants. That's the name of the show. Welcome to the show.
Okay, now I'm going to get a dictionary.
What do you know about the oldest God? What is the oldest legend that we have reference to? The very oldest named deity.
I would say that it's probably an Indian and Hindu god, but
it's not a bad guess. Okay, so when it comes down to this point, you have to look at it from, like you just did, from a cultural perspective. You have to say, okay, the oldest god where? The oldest god we have reference to in Africa and India and China and Europe? Are we talking North America, South America, Mesoamerica? Are we talking 10,000 years ago or 20,000 years ago? We have no idea. We have actual figures that we believe are religious that are orders of magnitude older than the stories we have about legends and myths. We have objects that are hundreds of thousands of years old, but our stories only go back
like
7,000 years, 5 maybe. Depends on where you're looking. Like, we don't even have that in Africa. We don't even have that in North and South America. No clue as far as that goes. We've got what, Twin 1 and Twin 2, or well, I can't remember what the Quetzalcoatl name, I mean the Aztec name for them are, but it's the original 2 individuals, the twins. That's their oldest myth that we can refer to.
Enki and Enlil? Enki and Enlil? Enki and Enlil. Enki, yeah. They're Sumerian gods, but
right. That would be the oldest. That would be the oldest written account.
I think that there's I happen to know where there's stone structures here in the town that I live in, where they're not going to be like covered because there's basically like a housing development built right on top of it. We're right in the middle of the woods, and like about 20 minutes from here, there's these like stone wall structures just in the middle of the woods, in the middle of fucking nowhere. But the town right here, right adjacent to where I live, is called Inca, but it's spelled different than like the Inca from the South Americas. But I think the people migrated. They migrated north up into this area, up into the mountain.
Gotta watch you can go check on this one if you want to. In North Georgia, there's a very interesting series of structures that if you go and look at them and take the measurements towards different stars, it is aligned exactly as Inca structures were aligned. It's built on the same floor plan as Inca structures. It looks exactly like a Maya construction, except it's not built of stone. Right. It's built of like a bunch of different, it's built of small stones and mud brick, and it uses a lot of land features built into the structure of it. But even then, it's still very, very eroded site. It's very difficult to actually go there and see the alignments and buildings and stuff because they are so very degraded. But you can tell when you get into like the slope area of what you would call, I guess, a temple, a pyramid. Well, in South America would be a pyramid, but here it's done on a literal hillside where it's just platforms built out to make the steps like the pyramid would have. And it's a really neat area. It's absolutely stunningly beautiful. And it is completely obvious that it's artificial. Once you get like when you're riding up to it and you pull up into like the little parking area, you're still a half mile away from the site. You're on the very edge of it from like an aerial view, but you have to walk way the hell over yonder. And once you start off into those woods, you can't really see far enough to see what you're going to. But once you go up the hill a little ways, you come to a flat and you realize, wait a second, that's exactly 100 meters that way, and that's directly uphill, and it's an easy walk here, but on either side, it would be a hard freaking climb, right? It's designed. It's not natural. And it's not huge either. It's only...
Godstones used to be, right?
No, we're talking much farther north, up around Helen like and not far south of the northern border.
Georgia and like South Carolina.
I don't know exactly where it's at. I went as part of a freaking resource thing in school. If you didn't go to certain classes, if you qualified to not be in certain classes, instead of being in those classes, you would go and do other stuff. And I could like stack up some hours doing that, and then they'd let me go on like these freaking field day trip type thing. We just go somewhere and do some shit. Like one of the things we did was we went to the Natural History Museum in Atlanta. A couple of weeks later, we went to go see a symphony. A couple of weeks after that, we went to a restaurant in Atlanta that was like a 5-star restaurant, and we had like this stupid point system thing of etiquette eating.
Oh yeah.
Get this, we're at a 5-star restaurant. They served hot dogs on buns, no toppings. That was what won the vote. Whenever they were trying to decide, they put it to a vote to the students, and plain hot dogs won somehow. I have no idea.
Like literally nothing, no ketchup, no mustard, like
freaking dog and a bun. That's it. A simple chimple, as it were. What's up, Snark and Sass? Booby. What's up, Whoops and Boops? Janica, good to see you, girl. So a couple of people done snuck in behind me. We got an old guy, Mitch. Good to see you. Welcome in.
Background thing.
Smoking on. Showed up.
Like
all right. So the oldest God. That's where we were at. Oldest God, right? We have myths and legends that reach all the way back to the very edge of the Neolithic. Oral traditions that go even farther. Some of the Australian myths go back 40 to 60,000 years. Some of the Slavic myths might go back equally deep into time. And so it's real hard. What's up, Shasta Valley? Good to see you, bud. Welcome back. It's really hard to look at a particular myth and be like, hey, that's the very first god. That's the oldest one. But the personification of different forms, I don't think qualifies as a god. So like saying the sun is a god, or saying the moon is a goddess, or saying the grass is a living being, or the great spirit occupies everything, I don't think that quite qualifies to be the first god. The personification of love and strength and all that stuff eventually leads unto being gods and deities. But the first god is probably a god of a hunt, if I had to guess. But that's just me. What do you think in chat? Is it a god of the hunt, or are we going to go with the sun? Because the sun would be a really good guess. It's pretty much worshipped everywhere at one point in time or another. All right, we're going to run this one for a little while. I like the way this guy talks. This is what's the name of this channel? Story Crow. Story Crow. Wait, is that right? Yeah. Story Crow's got about 5,000 subscribers. Homie does all kinds of like Celtic myths and stuff. What's up? Creation's the oldest god, a universal creator who is infinite. I'm not sure that qualifies. When you're speaking of the personification of different strengths and weaknesses, then you're talking the battle between good and evil. You're talking about existence versus existentialism.
Yeah.
What's up, Grim Reaper? Good to see you, bud. Welcome in. Death, the personification, that's another good representation of a god that would be very, very, very old, but probably not the first one, right? There would be one before it. Like, it took a very long time for the concept of drama and comedy to become deified into Dionysus, right? The concept of actoral things being deified. This concept comes straight out of the Stone Age, but the longer the process goes, the more balkanized the ideas become, and you end up with 14 different Slavic Thors that are all the god of strength and thunder, but they have different names like Brav and Gabos, and I can't remember the one that blows firebolts out of his eyes, but that guy too. But they're all essentially Thor. Yeah. Thor is just the most famous of these types of Celtic myths, you know. In this case, we're talking about Cernunnos, which is the horned god of the epic hunt, which may well have been the very first god worshipped from the perspective of a hunter-gatherer society needing to provide food for the entire tribe. That guy enough said, gotcha. Oh yeah, no. If you're not familiar with some of the Baba Yaga deep lore, go and look into how she lost her eyes. It's a good story. It's really cool. And it's old stuff. That's some really old stuff.
This, the oldest deity known to mankind. Hello, my friends. Welcome back to this channel and back to this series of videos I'm making called Deity Tracker, where I will be tracking various divinities through the forests of time and human culture. And today we will be looking at the horned god, Cernunnos, and we'll be asking the question, is this the oldest deity known to mankind? So before I begin with this, I'd like to caveat this. I am a storyteller in the oral tradition and a folklorist and a mythologist. These are interconnected disciplines. I am not a professional historian or archaeologist, although I have been an academic. I've studied, I've walked through those corridors. I leave all of that behind in these videos because I think as a sort of grassroots folklorist, your nose is a bit closer to the ground and you can make connections both with history and archaeology back through time and with folklore, both written and oral. And you can sort of look at the whole wider picture, just like you're tracking an animal through the forest and get a better sense of the journey this god has taken through time and history and culture, which is a forest, it's a labyrinth. And that is particularly fitting for this god. But because of that, I may be less conservative than an academic will be, and I might make statements that are quite broad in making connections and seeing resonances and images.
That's a pretty good caveat there. I like that. He's going at it from the perspective of the oral storytelling, not specifically from a given book. And so his interpretation or his telling of the tale might involve a mishmash of Germanic, Slavic, Celtic, Norse, different concepts. Keep in mind, there's this one feature that all of these cultures all have in common. There's two. An unknown form of animistic Celtism that we really don't have records of because the Romans didn't write about them. And a specific design of two-wheeled axle cart. One axle, two wheels. And it was ubiquitous across this particular brand of Celtic culture, right? And it was a regular thing for the entire little village to just pack everything up on their carts and take off and go live somewhere else for a year.
Like gypsies.
Yeah, just gypsies. Hello, Swiss Miss. Welcome to the chat. Good to see you, girl. So it's really hard to track these people's culture because we don't entirely know exactly where they physically existed at what points in time, or specifically how many of them there were, since they did cross vast distances in the process of their development. They picked up tiny bits of culture from all kinds of different extant cultures in the regions they passed through. So you look at the Slavic words and look at the etymology of the words, and you find these really old words that don't seem to have roots in their own language. And quite often you'll find the root will actually be like Proto-Indo or really early Scythian or something like that. Like it's just a random word that a Slavic tongue picked up because they traveled earlier in their culture. And these gods, this specific god that he's talking about, is repeated throughout the Slavic world. And when I say Slavic, we're actually, I'm going to say the pre-Celtic world. We'll go that far. This includes from the eastern steppes of Russia all the way to freaking Ireland when it comes down to it. So a vast region that was not specifically ruled by any commissar or any particular king or anything, but the gods, the pantheon of gods before them, were virtually identical, though they walked by different names.
It's almost like in a lot of old folklore stories,
Robin.
like the story of Finn McCool, there's a point in his youth when he's growing up in a forest where he moves from tracking animals to trapping them. I think a lot of academic disciplines are about trapping animals. Being a folklorist is about tracking, following the nose, you're close to the ground. Spiel over. But the point is, if you hear anything in this video which either you haven't heard before, let me know in the comments, or something you disagree with, let me know in the comments, or if I've missed anything, which I'm sure to, because this is all off the cuff, let me know in the comments, and do please give this video a like. So, Cernunnos, the horned god or antlered god, god of the wild, lord of the animals, god of trade and commerce, lord of the underworld sometimes, god of the crossroads that looks in many directions, and ancient guide.
Okay, so let's look in recent modern history. What god of the underworld do we have that has two horns and lives at a crossroads, that you meet at the crossroads? Little Tommy Johnson tell you all about it. I believe you did sell your soul to the devil.
I would just say the Grim Reaper.
The Grim Reaper doesn't have horns. Literally the red vipercated tailed devil with a pitchfork standing at the crossroads prepared to deal for your soul is a modern one of the more modern interpretations of this same god of the underworld, of trade and underhanded dealings and tracking and hiding and stealth and sneakiness and woodsmanship, all them woodsy things. You can't trust them boys. They play banjos.
Friend to mankind. When we think of the horned god, there's an image that often pops up in our mind if you're sort of familiar with mythologies and gods and pantheons, and it probably comes from contemporary paganism or Wicca. I guess there'll be a sort of a deer-headed man sitting cross-legged. There might be like a pentacle or a pentagram somewhere on him. He'll have antlers. He might have a torque or be holding a serpent. He'll be under the moonlight. He might have hoofs. And maybe sort of deer haunches, that kind of thing. I will talk about the contemporary pagan or Wiccan version of the horned god, maybe more towards the end, because I think it is part of the whole journey of this antlered deity.
Anybody else notice the IPA
but
over
first, I think I'm going to begin with where the god gets his name from. Cernunnos or Cernunnos or Cernunnos is a Gallic, French, Romano-Gallic deity. And he only appears once. There's only one instance that I'm aware of that he appears with his image, with his name, and it's quite chipped. I'll put it up on the screen. It's on something called the Pillar of the Boatman.
I was mainly speaking to the interpretation a Celt would give you had you showed up and described Lucifer to them, involving horns and hooves and whatnot. They wouldn't see what we see in their head. This is the creature that they would picture in their head, would be this somewhat benevolent deity. Homie has no interest in you and just unless you're part of the hunt. He doesn't even care.
Not at all.
Unless you're part of the great hunt, he's not interested.
That's important. And it shows just a bearded face, really, with horns, either bull's horns or very short, cropped antlers with two torques hanging on them. A torque is a symbol of aristocracy and elite status in Celtic society. It's a kind of usually gold neckband. It's like a king wears a crown. Celtic chieftains wore torques around their necks. So he's got two on his antlers, a sign of wealth, one of the things that Cernunnos and the horned god is associated with. It looks like, from the Pillar of the Boatman, that he's seated. He's in a seated posture. He might well be holding a torque in another hand, or maybe a money pouch, or maybe a cornucopia.
Well, I'm not going to lie, Carrie.
Symbol of sort of fertility.
I've been wondering about you for a minute, because I haven't heard your terrible opinions or your horrible takes on things. I haven't heard you spurg out a couple of weeks here, and I'm getting lonely, man. You say the things that I'm not permitting myself to say.
And abundance. There's various other gods on this seal as well, some just strictly Roman, like Jupiter, and others more Celtic. Just as a side note, we don't see Celtic deities presented in anthropomorphic form, in human form, ever really, until the Romans arrive. And then suddenly it's like shining a light on this whole cosmos of Celtic deities, some of which may be local versions of the same overarching deity or completely separate ones, we don't really know. But the Iron Age Celts, before the Roman arrives, never actually made statues or images of their gods. We don't really know why. Maybe just because they're so elemental and abstract, to put them in human form is a bit weird. That would be my guess. But yes, this pillar of the Boatman, the only time we see the horned god given the name Cernunnos, and we now give that name Cernunnos to any antlered or horned god, usually, including the contemporary pagan one. And that's just how it is. Cernunnos means horned one, so it does kind of make sense. The part of England that is Celtic, Cornwall, is also etymologically linked. It means horn. So it's interesting that this Cernunnos is on the pillar of the Boatman, which would have been on the banks of the Seine, a sacred river now in Paris. It would have been the head of the Parisi tribe, a Celtic tribe, before Julius Caesar came along and bashed them on the head and took over. But people who travel over water and also they're traders, they're merchants. It was erected by merchants. So a god here of moving over water by boat, and commerce and wealth and generating wealth, which is interesting given Cernunnos' associations also with the underworld, which is also a realm of
that's what we call bog
gold
people.
And gems, always in mythology. Think about Pluto and Hades, they're always associated with wealth. Also traveling over water by boat, a bit like Charon, the boatman. A bit like
I
many
got
other
it, dude. I've got StreamYard over here
which
too.
is a word for a guide in the afterlife. So that's another role that Cernunnos has that is kind of resonates with this pillar of the boatman here, because it would have been a place where lots of boats would have come. It also would have been at a crossroads, an intersection of road and water. And Cernunnos, the horned god, is again a god of multi-directionality, of thresholds, of crossing over, crossing a threshold of life into death, or civilization into the wilderness, or the human into the divine. That will become relevant later. This threshold crossing god, and almost guardian of the threshold, if you know what I mean.
So pillar of the Boatman,
bro. We've got Cernunnos.
If you're going to spend 15 seconds aiming, that's about 13 seconds longer than you should. Because as soon as you acquire a target, you execute.
Yeah.
And to give you a little advice that I got from a really old guy, he told me, he said, if you're ever in a position where you're going to have to shoot at something, shoot it twice. Any idiot can pull a bullet. It takes a surgeon to get to. Okay. Yes, sir.
Now let's compare the image that most people probably have in their heads, if it's not the neo-pagan version of Cernunnos. I'm sure you're all familiar with this image. It's sort of where the neo-pagan and Wiccan image of Cernunnos derives from. It's the horned god on the Gundestrop Cauldron that I've talked about a lot on this channel. It's a most magnificent object. It's a silver ritual bowl or cauldron that was found in a bog in Denmark, way outside the Celtic world. It may have been made in sort of, Southeast Europe, Thrace, or it may have been made in Gaul in France, maybe made in Britain. We just don't know. But it has Celtic iconography as well as a mixture of other iconography. I've got some of it tattooed on my arm here. There's a sort of resurrecting cauldron depicted inside the bowl.
It's interesting that you say that, because a later interpretation through Greek mythology aligns this same god with Chiron, the individual that trained all of the demigods and proto-gods. So, and he is a centaur, like straight up. Yeah, it's a really cool bowl, and there's a whole lot going on with it. Because when you get down to these little individual dudes down here, all their little shields are individual. They're all different. All the little flowers are individual and different. It's cool.
With a kind of god dunking warriors in it that re-emerge. I only mention that because of this rebirth resurrection theme that might become relevant later. But on another plate inside this bowl, there is this horned dude. the reason we normally call this guy Cernunnos, despite the fact that that name isn't written on the bowl, is because of some similar iconography with the Gaulish pillar of the Boatman, Cernunnos. He's holding a torque. He's also wearing a torque. He's sat cross-legged. This is quite a rare thing in iconography of the time. We associate that much more with Eastern gods, with Hindu and Buddhist figures and deities and iconography. That's going to become relevant in a minute. But he's seated. He's got antlers. He's holding a torque. He's on what broadly could be described as a Celtic bowl. Elsewhere, there's sort of caranxes, you know, those Celtic trumpets on it. It's obviously got Celtic iconography, so we can call this Cernunnos. But there's other things going on here as well. If you look at this figure, to me, this is my interpretation, this is a shamanic figure. He's sat in a yogic posture.
All right, so let's look at what's going on here. Homie's chilling out with his torch. He's got a snake in one hand and some really wacky clothes on. He's done summoned up a whole bunch of haminals and critters. There's a one-eyed goat up there. I don't know why that's not there. All the animals only have one eye. That's weird. What's that supposed to be? A dog or a lion, I wonder?
Oh, that's a good question. I think it's a dog.
This is a dude riding a dolphin. There's a dude riding a dolphin over here.
But why? That's so weird.
I'm not sure what this is. Looks like it might be this right here might be a dog. Could be a dog, but it could also be a pig. I mean, that's obviously a goat or an ibex or something along that line. And this is like, what, a reindeer or a deer of some sort. This thing and that thing really weird me out. And this thing here could very easily be one of those go olds from Stargate. It's kind of freaking me out. I don't want to look at it no more.
A pattern of leaves surrounded by dot.
I didn't even notice the leaves. He's right.
He recognizes antlers. He does, clearly.
What the hell is that thing, though? That thing is so weird. Why does it have a stripy tail?
And everybody's just like chill with that.
And that's not a dolphin, that's a fish. He's straight up riding a catfish.
Right.
Gabby Gray Hips. Where? Oh, hey, Gabby. Welcome back. Good to see you. What's up?
Work. And this is just my personal idea. No one's ever said this before, but this reminds me of being under the influence of certain hallucinogens. And if you compare it to artwork, say ayahuasca artwork from the Peruvian or Ecuadorian or Brazilian Amazon, shamans, herbalists that take the drink ayahuasca and look at the artwork produced by those shamans, such as Pablo Amaringo. There's a similar thing going on here.
Oh, dude.
Also on the panel,
Pablo Amaringo,
dude riding a dolphin.
Yeah, no, I don't think that's a dolphin. There's whiskers on that thing. That's a catfish, bro. That thing has whiskers. Look, whiskers. See the whiskers? See the way the fin is? A dolphin doesn't have fin like that. Neither. Maybe I'm asking too, but that looks like a catfish to me.
Yeah.
This one?
Yeah. Right behind it, yeah.
I kind of feel like that's more doggy than the other things that are down here. This thing down here is kind of sort of doggy. But that looks a little more doggy than the rest. But look how long the tail is. None of this makes any damn sense.
Porpoise. You also see that in Amazonian art. So I think this is a god of shamanism as well. I've got other evidence to back that up, which I'll get onto. You will also note on this figure, he's surrounded by animals. In fact, he seems to have a connection with a dog and a deer. Again, emphasizing the shamanic context, having either animal familiars or animal spirit guides, or seeing through the eyes of animals or transforming into animals. This is a very shamanic concept. It also is why we call Cernunnos the lord of the animals or the lord of the wild, because he's surrounded by all these beasties, mainly deer and dogs, things like that, and snakes. You notice he's holding a horned snake in his hand. Snakes often...
All right. Does a seal have a dorsal fin? Don't think so.
No, I'm pretty sure it doesn't.
Two little flippers, and they got little foot flippers in the back. That's about it, right? Okay.
Often symbolize water because they're like rivers, also air. They're often dual-natured, dragons and things like that, because they dwell in water and under the earth, but also in the sky. They're also associated with fire. They're a dual-natured thing, which again is relevant to Cernunnos. He's almost a dual aspect, or sometimes triple aspected deity. Now, this figure on the Gundestrop bowl, this antlered deity, this god of the wild, this lord of the animals, this shamanic seated god. Compare this image to another image that I'll put on the screen in a minute. This is from a...
All right. Let's look at this scene that we got going on right here. Homie has got himself framed in front of a very large oak tree. Has lovely fall leaves in the background. You've got a little bit of cat's claw briars over here on both sides of him. A little bit of sarsaparilla growing right there next to his foot. We got an IPA in this shot, and he is posted up on what appears to be a goat skin, possibly a little fold-out stool. Little stool. What's up, Bigfoot Anon? I have not seen you here in a minute. Welcome back. I have a suggestion for a movie if you know anybody who's willing to do it. Meth Gator. I got the whole thing worked out in my head. Email me, bro. Like, I'll do this thing. I'll record lines. I'll do whatever needs to be done.
I just want to be a fly on the wall.
I just want to do that final. You're right. Yeah, I'll just make sandwiches or something to watch it happen. I don't care. But I just want that final scene where they come crawling through the freaking woods back to the start of the adventure and find everybody there and they just hand him a burger and some barbecue. And go out and feed the meth gators some meth. Like the whole town's in on it. It's great. It's great. It's great. It's great. Oh, it's greatness itself.
A completely unconnected civilization in a different part of the world. This is the Indus Valley Seal, possibly the most famous of the Indus Valley Seals. The Indus Valley civilization was a civilization that it was one of the first civilizations that ever produced writing around the same time as ancient sort of Sumeria. It flourished in what is present-day Pakistan. We still haven't deciphered the text, and then it collapsed when the Indo-European...
That's the whole point of it, dude. It's done in the style of one of those old school existential horrors with like a knife slicer or like you remember the Blob? You remember how the Blob kind of hunted you down and it come after you and it grew as it went, and then you had the Thing, which it could turn into different people and come at you. Well, Meth Gator is going to take place in the Florida Everglades, specifically as part of an adventure, a weekend, like just like you can go and do a crime solving dinner where you do the whole what's it called? Dear God. They do these role-playing dinners. There's all kinds of weird little things you can do. This is going to be, what's that?
That's like mega LARPing.
Well, no,
we're doing it in Florida Everglades. We're mega.
It's like a real world game of Clue. You go and you sit, you have all the evidence presented to you, and then you have to solve the crime. Anyway, in this case, it's basically a little nowhere Junctionville, absolutely nothing location in Florida who has nothing going for it, except they happen to have a very well-trained toothless gator. Someone comes up with the idea of, we can sell an adventure. And everybody gets paid an extra $500 if they get attacked by the gator. And so it could be just as cheesy as you can imagine, because meth heads don't have teeth. When the gator pops up, snatches them in, like you could have like some of the scenes could be so bad because two guys standing there fishing aren't actually fishing. They're in place to be attacked by the gator. They're there to make the $500. Right? That's why they grab they see the folks coming and run out to the dock to go get attacked where they're visible. I think it would make an excellent movie. It just needs the right finesse to make it work. We're not talking Crystal Lake and Jason hunting people down. We're talking a slow languid tour where the people witness people being snatched. The tourists witness this gator wreaking havoc, but the tour guide simply says, "Oh yeah, gators are very dangerous. You have to be very careful." But the whole thing's been set up. The whole thing's a setup. I think it'd be great.
Rolled in over them, the Vedic people, the ancestors of Europeans and Indians today, and Persians and a lot of other people in between. I'm not going to go on about the Indo-Europeans, but this Indus Valley Seal, look at the similarity here between.
Well, it's not meant to be a good movie.
Gundestrop Cauldron. He's surrounded by wild beasts. He's seated in a yogic posture. He's
right inside a gator, an empty light bulb and a gator mouth. With smoke curling out of the gator's nose. Suddenly, hold on. I'm gonna roll. The tagline could be "When the dragon chases you."
How about choked and died?
That's pretty. I tickled
myself. I'm sorry. Probably a legit problem in Florida.
Man,
you know they probably have gators on
that. Man, as far as how would you know? They get all scrawny and don't eat for a month. I'm pretty sure gators do that naturally. The lights go out, but the gators don't. I could use Shake That Bottle as the intro tune. We could use Chasing Dragons as the exit tune. It'd be awesome. I'm telling you, half this movie's already written. We just need somebody to put it to paper.
Call it sci-fi.
Often more represent demonic or wild forces. So it could be two or both things going on there. He's also got 3 faces. Yeah, that is one of the reasons, among many, why this Indus Valley seal is connected with the Hindu god Shiva. Now, Shiva comes centuries later, but many people say this is a proto-Shiva via the Vedic Rudra. There's lots of reasons for that. Shiva is called the Lord of the Animals, Pashupati, and here we have a seated yogic figure surrounded by animals, a lot like the iconography of Shiva. Shiva also often has 3 faces. This is to highlight his supremacy as the actual king of the gods, not just the destroyer. So one face usually means the past, one means the present, one means the future. So he's omniscient. Also sometimes his quality as creator, destroyer, and maintainer.
Dude, if we can get Meth Gator off the ground, you're getting a fucking credit. That's all there is to it. Homie, he ate the VW Beetle that the guy was running the meth in, and now he's all twigged out, and he has a unit in him, so you can hear it bumping along. Give me 2 Xanax bars. I'm ready to get full of 5th of crown to wash it down. I'm downtown snapping rules. Ain't no shame up in my game. In fact, I'm mentally deranged. That's great.
Yeah. Instead of being split between Vishnu and Shiva and Brahma. So this is Shiva. Shiva is also a dual aspected god. He's the god of yogis. That's why he's always sat in a yogic posture. That's why he's sat on a lion's skin or a tiger's skin, because he's conquered the 5 senses. But he's also the god of eroticism, of sexuality, of fertility, and those things should be opposite.
No, dude. He got the homie with he just got the backpack, right? With the Bluetooth speaker and the cell phone. And now you hear it ringing occasionally when it's coming. I'm ready to get full up at the crowd. What you do? Scarecrow, what's that? You're popping the powerful pills they call OxyContin. Could you imagine that?
In the direction of that song. I'm like, hey, really?
Imagine that.
I'm like, I know this is my people. Come on.
Could you imagine that creeping up on you in the darkness?
You creeping up on me in the darkness?
No. Not a gator. You don't know it's a gator. All you hear is the Bluetooth speaker playing at its stomach. You don't know there's a gator there. You just hear some.
You just hear
music on the way by. What's up, Tiffany? Welcome in. Good to see you. That's wild.
I don't want to connect to the speaker.
All right, I got one more bit to the show. We're going to skip to the chase on this one. All right, there's this particular.
After he explained what he was trying to do.
All right, yeah, no, we're right at the end of it. It's right. No. All right, hold up.
Donald McFarlane.
There we go. Donald McFarlane. This is one of the more interesting missing persons cases that has come through this channel. Homie goes missing, apparently just sort of out of the blue, doing shit that he had done before. He went out to go do some stuff and didn't come back. And because it happens sometimes, they weren't real quick on the draw trying to get a search party out there. So maybe they were a little slow on that part. But there's a whole bunch of weirdness that went down. Do what?
I've never heard of this one. I've not heard of this story.
It's relatively old. If I remember right, homie didn't get found for like 22 years. But the chick who found him called up a radio station and was like, hey, there's a body over here in this location, and I'm too old to go check on it. And then later she wrote something to like a newspaper or something. And in both cases, they just kind of laughed and chuckled it off. But then years later, a hiker in that location finds the dude, finds evidence of the guy. I don't know if they actually found the body. What's up, Andrew? Good to see you, bud. Welcome in.
Strange disappearance in 1895 adds him to this group of people. This took place in Scotland, Ben Har specifically, which was a mining district at that time. Donald was a seasoned miner and had a great knowledge of the labyrinth-type tunnels of Ben Har. We don't know an awful lot about Donald, but what we do know is that he was well respected in his line of work.
No. It's this one. Yeah. This is the one right before. We're going to come in from the tail end of the one before. A little bit further.
It was said that when William had ascended up the mountain by himself, there was a possibility that he might have come on the morning of the 25th of July 2019. The quiet landscape of southeastern Manitoba, Canada, was about to become the backdrop of an unusual event.
Why did it do that?
Mary Byman, an 84-year-old woman with a zest for life and a love for the outdoors, set out from her home in Minnesota to indulge in one of her favourite activities, berry picking in the Spare Woods area. Mary was not a stranger to these woods. She had traversed this terrain numerous times, including the exact berry picking spot that had been chosen for that day. Her daughter had stated that this was one of her favourite activities and that she was always out in this area picking them. On this particular day, she joined a large group of berry pickers, all of whom were eager to get started as they arrived at the site roughly 77 miles southeast of Winnipeg. Upon arrival, the group dispersed and got paired up for safety reasons. Mary was partnered with a fellow berry picker, someone that she knew and someone that she had an understanding of safety. They agreed to stay within earshot of one another, but also enjoyed the peaceful solitude that these kind of areas offer. All of the berry pickers were equipped with a whistle, just in case they accidentally strayed too far away, which is a vital tool for communication in the dense sprawling expanse of the forest. Time passed, and the sun began its descent, signalling the end of their time in the forest. It's not clear exactly when they agreed to leave the woods, but once that time came, Mary's partner sounded her whistle to call out for Mary. To her alarm, Mary's response was a lone, faint whistle sound, and then silence. This is what Mary's daughter, Maureen Gertz, had to say. This is really bizarre, because her partner had a whistle and she blew it when it was time to come out of the bush. And she swears she heard my mother blow the whistle. Panic set in as Mary failed to reappear. CBC.ca reported that the partner whistled and waited for around 15 minutes, but after the first reply whistle from Mary, from what I can gather, she never heard another. Obviously,
So here's my question. Whatever happened to Home Chick, was it triggered by the whistle? She whistled. There were probably a few other people that whistled in the general vicinity, and then she pulls out her whistle and blows it, and bam, whatever it is that happens, happens, because there's no response whistle after that. So would that trigger a bear? Would that trigger a cat or something along those lines to attack? That's my question. It would definitely trigger a person.
Yeah.
The concern of the entire group then escalated quickly as they realized the gravity of the situation. Though the organizers did realize that it was weird that Mary whistled in response once, but then never whistled again. The alarm was raised to the authorities.
Another theory is something that happened right before, and homie whistled, whoever it was that did it, whistled so that they wouldn't come looking for a minute so he could get the hell on.
Yeah.
Cat.
Yeah.
And a whistle could trigger a wolf too, yeah, I suppose.
Authorities and approximately 100 volunteers, many of whom were well versed in search and rescue, converged on the site. The forest, however, was not an ally when it came to the search effort. Moving away from the berry patch, it began to present a formidable challenge with its thick undergrowth, tangled vines, and dense canopy. But this only led to further questions about what was happening. Why in the world would Mary go this way? And not only why, but how? She was 84 years old and couldn't get around like she used to. I could imagine some of the volunteers feeling as though they weren't even searching a reasonable place for her, based on the description given anyway. Rachel Gertz, Mary's granddaughter, later recounted just how difficult the search was. She stated that vines would trap their feet, and that there were swampy regions with hidden animal dens, and terrain that you could quite easily get stuck or lost in. It's also important to think about that in the context of the now missing 84-year-old. How was she traversing this so quickly as to avoid hundreds of people that were undoubtedly faster than her? To make matters worse, they found no trace of her in the days to come. On the second day, the searchers welcomed the cadaver dog teams with open arms, expecting them to make all the difference. But they did not. In fact, for one reason or another, the dogs simply couldn't latch onto a scent, despite being brought to the very spot she disappeared from. This was one of those rare instances where it was possible to bring the dogs to the exact spot she vanished, and it still wasn't working. One of the searchers, Les Fryson, really put things into context, setting the scene and posing a prominent question very well. We're all baffled because it's as if she disappeared into thin air. She was 84 years old. She couldn't exactly run a mile through the bush, so where is she? His statements displayed the sheer incredulity of the searchers looking for her. It seems that the people in the forest really did think something was up. Nothing was making sense. Firstly, Mary's partner blows her whistle and she swore blind that she heard a response from Mary. But that's the problem, only one response and then nothing else. How does that make sense? After returning the whistle once, how could she possibly get so far away as to not hear the next call to her? As Les put it, she couldn't exactly run a mile through the bush, so where was she? And perhaps just as important, what happened to her? The search intensified with each passing hour. The ground teams continued combing through the forest, aided by the dogs, while above, drones, helicopters, and planes flew overhead. The vastness of the search area, spanning over 40 square miles, was daunting. At the height of the search, they had over 1,000 people out looking. All of the stops were pulled out for her. 4 days passed, and with them came a diminishing hope that they would find Mary alive. The family, I'm sure, while trying to remain hopeful, must have been bracing for the worst after learning about the grim outlook from authorities.
I didn't do it.
The terrain they were facing, the elements, and just the passing of time were all adversaries here. Then, in a turn of events, just as unexpected as her disappearance, Mary was found. This was 4 days from the time of her disappearance, over a mile away at 8 PM on the 29th, huddled under a tree in a shallow hole that was filled with water. Mary's shoes were missing, she was confused, disoriented, and couldn't really remember what had happened, stating that she thought she'd only been there for a day. Mary had sustained bruises and scratches from the forest, and she was now unable to walk, but was otherwise okay. At first, she thought that she was hallucinating when the searchers came across her. The searcher who found her through the dense vegetation told her that she wasn't going to spend another night in the bush. This was given short shrift, but the searchers couldn't actually get to her at first, and the fire department had to spend 2 hours clearing out the brush around her. You might pose the question that, if they couldn't get to her and they had to spend 2 hours clearing it out first, how did she get in there in the first place? Perhaps I'm misunderstanding something there. Now, again, like Tommy, if this incident wasn't already weird enough, let's get bizarre. The circumstances so far were not the only oddities to this disappearance, because now we have to talk about the man who found her. Daryl Contius was the searcher that located her, alongside his son Bo. Daryl said that he had a dream the night prior in which his mother, who had long since passed away, told him to go find Mary, which is exactly what he did. Is it really possible that there could be more to this than we know? In response to this, Mary's daughter said that she doesn't believe in magic, but she did find the circumstances of Daryl's discovery strange. Daryl made the point that the stars aligned in some sense because he didn't have the money to drive down there. But oddly enough, a stranger did give him some cash to fund the trip after he explained what he was trying to do. That truly is a remarkable coincidence, that he would have this dream and then essentially travel to her exact location. It's difficult to know how to comment on this aspect of the discoveries, but that is what was reported. And by the way, Tommy and Mary are not alone. Donald McFarlane's strange
All right. Oops, wrong button. That is one of the neatest little stories I've come across. I've got one other bonus video, and it comes to tell me you don't want to interview that dude's beard. All right, so this is from Dunking is the name of the channel, and I will try to put the link in chat, but I can't swear that it'll actually work because YouTube removed some of my capabilities recently, and I find it emasculating. Anyway, so this is Dunking. He's going to take 10 minutes to explain about a little-known Peruvian flood myth. It's very, very similar to the Christian myth in that it occurs not long after the creation of the world and a long time ago. You know, before the wind, before the snow.
I'm sure you've heard the stories of Quetzalcoatl and Viracocha, the civilizer god kings that were said to have come to South America after the Great Flood. But were you aware that there's a Peruvian myth of a civilizer god king that was said to have come before the Great Flood, and that the flood pretty much wiped his people out? It's kind of funny that you don't hear this spoken about anymore in the alternate history community, although it used to be. And there are some archaeologists and historians that weigh in on it, but not very many anymore. So let's talk about the myth of Namelap and his people. Hi, I'm Dan, and welcome to Debunking. The first written account of the Namelap myth crops up in 1586 and was written by Miguel Cabello de Balboa. In it, he goes through the beginning and the end of this noble bloodline and one of the offshoots. This is not the only account, but it is the most thorough. The other account that comes up is about 200 years later, and it came up pretty much on its own. So this does add a lot of veracity to the idea that this is an original indigenous people myth and has very little Spanish influence, because these two were very similar over 200 years apart. Now, the story begins with Namelap showing up in northern Peru with a huge number of people in tow and their culture intact, including artifacts and all kinds of stuff. So many people were said to have been with him that he had 40 in his entourage, including like a makeup artist and that person in charge of bathing him and all kinds of goofy stuff. He showed up on a massive fleet of balsa boats, and there was a bunch of concubines on them. After they arrived, Namelap led them into the interior where they looked for a place to settle. When they found an appropriate place, they built a temple dedicated to this giant green statue of Namelap himself, it was supposed to be. That there was their god, basically. And they built the temple around it, and then they started a cult, basically, in the entire region that was dedicated to the worship of this god. Now, when Namelap grew old and he knew death was near, he had his attendants bury him in his house and then tell all the people that he had sprouted wings and flown away of his own accord. This caused a lot of people in the area to like freak out, and they started leaving and going and searching for him all over the region, many never to return. Now, his son did a similar thing, except for instead of being buried in his home, he was interred deep in the ground, and then they told everybody the same kind of thing. He just disappeared on his own. This also caused a lot of people to leave, but in his case, he'd also sent a lot of people out. He had had so many children that many of them went out with the intention of starting up their own little dynasties. Now, the chronicle continues on in the capital city of Chote, speaking of those who remained, and if you...
To put this in modern parlance, my man and all his sons were pimps.
More descendants of the king, and eventually you get to the last king, and Fempelek, I believe is how it's pronounced, and he was just hell-bent on moving them to a different area. So he kept trying to move that big green stone god, and he couldn't do it. He failed multiple times. So finally he's like approached by the devil, but the devil is disguised as a woman, and he ends up sleeping with the woman, and then it begins to rain.
So all of this checks out. Giga Chad laid low by woman. Gotcha.
For 30 days and 30 nights. And with the end of that time, after everything's flooded out and a bunch of people die and everything's messed up and all these crops die, and a year later there's still no good food, and so the remnants of his people tie his hands behind his back and chuck his ass into the sea and say, well, maybe this will fix everything.
All right, hold on. We have the art of war. We have the conqueror. I'm not sure what to do with that, bro. Hey, how you doing? Hello, TFW neighbors. I don't get that.
What up?
What's happening? Who are you? Oh, hey, baby. Damn, you Steve.
Who else do you think has been obsessing about our new movie production?
Right? I can't wait. I'm so excited. I'm so excited that I just can't hide it. I know. I just want to touch you. Oh, I can't wait. What's going on? Oh, we had a minor technical issue. A super pimp joined the chat but didn't want to admit who he was because he's too much of a functional alcoholic. I don't know. I don't have any idea where I was going with that. No, it's not.
No, I actually thought it was kind of interesting watching you figure out what to do with this situation. I had no intention of not identifying myself, but then I saw you kind of stumbling on it. I was like, oh.
Well, the only reason I stumbled was because I debated. I was messing around beforehand, and I have this, which I can do. Where's it at?
Don't. I'm fine
with it. I got this, and I got this, and this one doesn't really do anything. This one also sucks. Same thing here. So these are the two covers that I have that actually function, but I didn't want to use those. The other option, when you have a media up, you can just make the media full screen and roll with it. which is what I decided to do, which gives you an opportunity to prove friend or foe.
Yeah, if only you had a beard like that.
Dude, I want to interview this dude's beard. Screw his channel. I don't care. I think it's funky. I just want to cuddle in it. I want to lay in his hair.
And well, lo and behold, it did, and that was the end of him. One of the dynasties that had split off from Namelapse tribe in the early days continued on all the way until the Spanish arrived. However, they were vassals of another city by that time, but they were still around then. And that's basically the myth in a nutshell. Now, there's a few things that are noteworthy to alternate historians like myself, and the first thing would be that they show up with their culture intact. They don't show up with like a piecemeal culture or one that's like seemingly falling apart. They have artifacts, they have big groups of people and an entire like pecking order established and stuff, and that says that whatever culture they came from was pretty robust. The second thing that's noteworthy would be...
I was just going to let that play out, but since the smoking auditor won the game, he won. You win. You get the participation trophy of the night. Congratulations.
This dude's hair and beard are like a monolithic entity. There's no even beginning of the start of one and the stop of the other. It's
right. He should just braid them all together as one great French plait. It'd be epic.
It's like you could remove all of his hair off of his whole head, just like a Mr. Potato Head attachment.
Okay, so I have to approve of some of these movies up here. He's got Where the Buffalo Roam.
How old is this? Because there's a lot of VHSs I'm seeing.
Yeah. This one in particular is only a month old. Bro.
Is that an Xbox on his wall?
I'm not seeing one.
On the top right. What's up here? Is that
PlayStation?
It's a PlayStation.
Is it a picture of one?
It's a poster. It's just on the wall. He's certainly doing some geek moves. I mean, he's got both the episodes of V. He's got a bunch of retro game things over here. A handful of actual no bullshit CDs just laying out.
If he didn't have that V from his dead shit, then he wouldn't even be half as cool.
Red flag.
Maybe he'd be interested in the Gator movie.
Inside a communist cell, and the commies are coming, are the two most, that and The Art of War are the most apparent.
I zoned all the way out. I'm not going to lie. I have no comment at all.
Okay. The fact that they were moving a stone by boat that later dudes couldn't move across the ground. So that does heavily imply that the ancients knew something that the later people did not, right? Obviously, if dude tries multiple times and he can't do it.
Famous. Welcome in.
And the statue itself is pretty noteworthy. I mean, the giant green statue does sound a little reminiscent of the jade tablets of Thoth, doesn't it? Or maybe it's copper. Maybe it's just slightly rusted copper, and this is an object of some sort of ancient high technology, right? I mean, there's a lot of tantalizing little tidbits you can go down with this here whole rabbit hole. And if you believe in ancient high technology, the fact that they were supposed to have been around before the floodwaters does kind of make them a good candidate for that. It's not.
All right. So have you ever heard my boat people theory hypothesis?
No.
Okay. So this is one
I'm
of
not surprised there is one, just for what it's worth, though.
This is one of my more out there concepts. So I have this idea, this thought that the story of Atlantis might be somewhat overblown, but perhaps it's merely misunderstood. Right? If you remove the story of Solon and the physical description from the stele from which he took it, supposedly, then we can eliminate all references to an island and a harbor and a destruction that took overnight. Okay? Once that's taken place, we merely need a location for a culture to exist that is essentially a antediluvian culture that could have survived some part of the Ice Age. Right?
I mean, what defines Atlantis as a properly Atlantis, though?
I'm not sure there is a way to do that, because when you go to every major body of water in this freaking world that had people on the coast at the time, you find a lost continent that's just out there somewhere. High Brazil, the continent of Mu, Lemuria, Atlantis. I don't think it was a lost continent. I don't think it was an island, and I don't think it was any of that. I think these people actually lived on the ocean. They were sea gypsies. What?
The Rishat structure, which they believe could possibly be the remnants of Atlantis.
Has no bearing in this hypothesis. What I was looking for was a location where the concerted, the shared myths of all of our beginning cultures, the idea of dragons, of winged serpents, of great beasts, of these individual god type figures that seem to have the same sort of powers that appear in all of the early myths and legends. I was looking for a source for some of that hangover culture that could come from the early Paleolithic into the late Paleolithic without having to struggle through the 10,000 years of freaking ice age that wiped out most of humanity at the time. And the sea is the only answer I could come up with. We know boats were in utilization 200,000 years ago. We have no evidence of boats before 7,000 years old. And that is a massive lack of knowledge.
Yeah.
And I believe we may have been on boats longer than that, ever since Monkey figured out stick floats.
Yeah. Very possible. Very
what
possible.
It seems likely to me that Atlantis is an evolution of the concept of the Library of Alexandria.
And later, when you come into the Aristotelian and Plato's era, yes.
But that, I guess that doesn't work chronologically, so never mind.
No. So the way I look at it is this. Do you remember the term, and ATL would like this reference, the sea peoples from the Bible? How, and we can document this, it's called the Bronze Age collapse all across the Mediterranean on a random fucking Tuesday. Every single port city in the Mediterranean was inundated by people who wore pointy hats and used swords and bows. And they just came, quote unquote, from the sea. They just showed up, started tearing hell. At the same point in time, every single major culture in the region decided that hill forts was the way to go. Not these
pointy hats, huh?
Right, exactly. So in the Bible, they're referred to as the sea people, but this was not just referenced only in the Bible. It was referenced also in Egyptian history, and is referenced in the later ends of things like the Scythians and the who's those other assholes, those Phoenicians. They also mentioned the fact, and it's hard to say that the Phoenicians wouldn't have known about some sea peoples.
Well, they were sea people.
They were sea people in the first place. Hell, they established their city by means of conquest. They just showed up and said, by the way, y'all are Phoenicians. Congratulations, making some bread. And they had a city. So
they did that.
Who's to say? There's very little Proto-Phoenician in existence. And I believe that this is because their culture existed off the coast, not actually, because think about it. The very first time in history that the human race had gotten together enough to create something that resembled a navy, and poof, the mere existence of these things causes every single family that lives on the ocean out there to come down on them. The local navies would have recognized these individuals probably as pirates.
Yeah.
It would never have occurred to them that it was a culture. So, and when you ask these people, where did you come from? They would point at the fucking ocean and say, we live out there.
Way out.
And you as a person, a landlubber, would assume that there's an island over there somewhere that they come from. And that's not what he means at all. He means he lives on a big canoe or a Polynesian.
I mean, I'm pretty sure they would have been able to communicate that I live on a boat.
Sure.
If they wanted to.
But that depends on whether they would actually want to. Why would you tell people
right?
You did have islands out there that you could land on? You wouldn't say a word about it for exactly the reason that these people have put together armies and navies. And you'd have no evidence. There would be zero evidence of anything resembling this anywhere in the world because of the change of sea levels between the end of the last ice age and like 9,000 years ago.
I just don't think that you could have a secret water world society grow to the size. Like it just the plot doesn't make sense.
I'm not saying it was huge and world spanning. I'm saying it was mobile. And
Mediterranean spanning
at that point in time. I think they entered the Mediterranean and encountered resistance for the first time in their history, and their response to resistance is outright decimation and piracy. I think the establishment of the Phoenician fort in I can't remember the name of the freaking city, Arcta. I can't remember. Anyway, the establishment of that city was the last gasp of the Mediterranean branch of this particular family culture. I believe that family culture was matriarchal and that it carried an awful lot of observational data through probably oral storytelling about mathematics and whatnot through basic eidetic memory, mimetic memory training, because it's all oral. Every one of these tales is oral. None of it's written down until you get to Gilgamesh and the Sanskrit Indian legends and stuff. That's when you start having things written down.
I mean, Great Britain, if you just look at the geography, Great Britain still makes the most sense to me as like a source. It's perfectly perched up there in the corner. You've only got two sides to worry about. If you've got it's a perfect fortress, really.
It is. Great Britain is in an absolutely immaculate location to not be invaded by anything. I always liked playing with the idea of London for Atlantis, but not the London, modern London, the London of 12 to 14,000 years ago, which would have had the river way farther out in the channel, and the channel would not have run all the way across. It would have been an inlet like a high fjord. Doggerland, that whole shelf would have been exposed.
Are you familiar with Bernard Cornwell, the author?
I do believe so. Can you give me a specific book?
Yeah, hold on, let me find it.
Is that like Barnhard?
The Saxon Tales, or the Saxon Chronicles. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. Well,
have you read those?
I'm not intimately familiar with it, but I read it back many, many moons ago.
They're so dope. That's all. They're dope. Full stop.
Okay. Full stop.
I think I've read this series like 3 times.
So basically, I'm not saying that there was a world-spanning culture. I'm saying that there was a specific group of people who just didn't do the land thing. Much like Celts, they moved constantly and just lived on their boats for the most place. They put in to get fresh water. They put in to hunt. They put in and did beach combing. They may have developed a few traps here and there in specific coves they knew where were, and they probably hunted every single island off the coast. They probably explained why cats were on Malta 19,000 years before the first boat was discovered. I'm just saying, like,
and presumably they control logistics, right? In the region, which is basically the key to everything.
They could. But I remember a matriarchal thing. I believe they dropped their fighting age men off at places all along the coastlines. And this is where we get a lot of our myths and legends of these culture builders, where these are educated.
Get out of this house. You're driving me crazy.
The what?
Like matriarchal culture is like, get the fuck out of my house. You kids are driving me crazy.
Basically, well, no, you keep the daughters. All the
right.
track through daughter rearing. The daughters get boats. The boats have to be manned by men. The daughters choose the men from the shore that she wishes to keep. And so the women would end up having small harems of boat managers, basically.
I mean, it seems like a good solution to teenage boys.
Right? You just leave them. You leave them. But keep in mind, let's say this was, which I don't believe them to be a Slavic culture. It doesn't make any sense for them for that. It would more likely be somewhere around. Have you ever seen the Sri Lankan sea gypsies?
No.
Okay. This is a virtually identical culture.
But I love that phrase. Just the phrase Sri Lankan sea gypsies is fantastic.
They hate it. But
they do?
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was just surprised that they hate that. How could you hate that?
Because they don't consider themselves Roma. They consider themselves a totally independent culture from the Polynesian state. And so they don't even vote. They're not involved in anything. They don't do land. The only reason they're in Sri Lanka is because China kicked them out and fired at them every time they started to come in. Anyway, that type of culture actually works really well, provided you have the space to move around to do it. And I think the first time they encountered a strong force that they couldn't just outright overwhelm through superior tactics, superior mobility, and superior experience in warfare was when the Bronze Age navies, the city-state navies, first established. And get this, do you remember why those navies were built? To protect their trade from raiders at sea.
From the sea.
Unnamed pirates that never existed before the trade started, and suddenly, poof, they had better boats than the merchants.
Yeah. We even got a pirate legend on our coastline.
Oh, baby, we was Spanish Main down here, honey. Like full on, full stop.
What was the trade routes that needed protected?
At the time, was the Mediterranean Sea was largely Egypt to Greece, Egypt to southern Iberia, which would be in like the Ionic coast, Iconia. Sorry, Greek is not my first language. I stutter when I speak English sometimes. Basically, the stories of Theseus and whatnot would have come out of this time period, to immediately before this time period. People who showed up with sudden city building technologies that no one else had ever guessed before. They just pop up out of the ground, fully formed from Zeus's forehead, and build temples and megalithic structures at every culture that they stop and talk to. Every time one of these guys hopped off a boat, a brand new culture erupted.
I try not to get caught up in white people shit.
And you immediately assume it was white people. Stop it. That's racist as hell. I never said that. Just because Viracocha and Manu and every single one of these people that are depicted have long white beards and big Slavic noses doesn't mean they were white people.
And my dad's beard is white. My dad's beard is like as white as yours. But that's not white.
Are you threatening me? Hey, Flow State. We're beyond the pale of my show. Are you going to go live tonight?
I don't know, but I never know.
You suck.
I suppose there's not a reason not to.
Well, I was I generally do like a 2-hour show and then a little while.
So what you're saying is you're shutting it down, but I should open up.
If you're going to open up a show, I will shut it down and go grab me something to eat right quick and come join you. If not, I might just do a transition and go to the next frame.
I'm going to set something up on StreamYard real quick. Congratulations on your transition, though.
Yeah, well, I've always wanted to be a stunning and brave woman that don't need no man. But
I mean, I could see how you'd be a beautiful woman.
I have the most amazing legs, dude. You would be absolutely stunned.
I actually
Why do
believe
I feel
that.
like true?
Don't you feel Don't you feel like he's not lying about that?
I feel like he's definitely not lying about that. I don't even want to compare legs. I'm like, this is going nowhere fast.
Is it gay for me to say, "Let me see your legs"?
No.
No homo. It's covered by the power of no homo.
Oh, I'm going to teach him how to twerk.
No, the fuck you're not.
All right. Do you want to set up your thing? I'll stay live for a minute so you can drop the link into chat and anybody.
Yeah, I'm just over here doing it. If do your thing, and if you want to kick me out or however, I'm just on another tab.
Okay, you go do your thing.
They're like nomadic peoples.
We 5 more minutes of this particular video. I'll let it play out, and that'll give everybody time to do the thing we're doing. All right.
Oh, and then you can do the audience drop. You know what I'm talking about? The raid thing?
Yeah, that's what we're gonna try to do. I'm pretty sure you have a. I'm pretty sure
you can do it.
Okay, just drop the link in private chat. I'll transfer it over. Okay. All right. We're going to let this roll.
Not hard to see why this shows up in older books about the lost civilization stuff. I mean, this is pretty interesting things all in all. It sounds like another version of a Viracocha myth, but with some seriously older elements involved. But what does science have to say about this? Have they found any evidence of this, or is this all a complete myth? Well, in 1980, archaeologist Christopher Donnan started investigating a site known as Chotuna and Chonornkap. Sorry, I know my pronunciations suck. It's named that because of the 2 pyramids that dominate the site. And the Chotuna pyramid is believed by some, including him, to have been dedicated to that god Namelap. In a book that's named after those 2 pyramids that I can't pronounce, Christopher Donnan not only digs into the legend, but he also investigates the site and has a few conclusions that he makes. Originally, he believed he would find pottery or something that would prove that the Moche people were the Namelap people, but that's not what he found at all. Instead, he found a bunch of different pottery, some enclosures, a bunch of different stuff, including evidence of copper smelting. With the ore being brought to the site from all around the region, and the site being around 1,200 years old from the earliest layers that we can date. So this may well be the place that Namelap brought his people to. However, as the archaeologist himself says, the idea was not to prove or disprove that Namelap had once existed, Donnan explained. That wouldn't be possible. If you thought you knew where Camelot was and you organized a 3-year excavation of the site, how would you know that King Arthur was real or that he lived there? Even if you found a big round table, could you then be able to say this is Camelot? Not likely, the archaeologist said. So we can't say for certain that this is the place of the Namelap legend. I mean, the excavations are still continuing to this day, and they found 3 separate times of occupation in the site where the site was conquered a couple of different times. There's different types of sacrifice and ritual mutilation going on at the site. The site definitely has a lot of age and history involved in it, and it definitely saw the changing of the times, sometimes in the same culture, other times when a different culture would come and knock the old one out. So Donnan posits that it's possible that an El Nino came along and caused that terrible flood that caused the year of famine afterwards, and that's what caused them to chuck the king into the sea. Now, that's interesting as hell on the one hand. On the other hand, it either means that it was like the very first El Nino that they'd experienced in a long time, or that they had relocated when dude was said to have tried to move the idol and he couldn't. They'd relocated because if they'd been there for a long time, that weather pattern happening, they would have been used to it and known what to expect, and they wouldn't have blamed it on God or something, or sleeping with the devil or whatever. So that seems a little bit off to me, but it is still a pretty interesting possibility. So where do I stand on all this? Well, don't forget to check out my Patreon and like and subscribe. Fine, I'll quit fence sitting. All right. I think that them bringing a big rock there that they couldn't move later, that's an intriguing part of the story. I think that being like the Emerald Tablet of Thoth or being an object of high technology, that's not so convincing to me, although it is minorly interesting, the similarities. It's far more intriguing to me is the confirmation of the Viracocha or the Quetzalcoatl myth, this being an account that shows up with flood legends attached to it and the same kind of showing up and civilizing and taking over an area, but not in the same vein.
Okay, so here's a huge difference between the two. Quetzalcoatl shows up, talks to the local king, They have some type of a combat type thing that happens. The old king is defeated. I don't believe he's killed, because Quetzalcoatl doesn't become king. He leaves the king's successor as the king, but takes over basically as regent. And never Martinez Stiltz Hominid Academy. Little beards. Well, I'm growing. I've been feeding it blondes and brunettes. What do you want?
Exactly as the other ones, and it does seem like somewhat more detached from the biblical side of things. That's just a little bit of an opinion on my part, but again, this is the part we're talking about my opinion, so deal with it. Now, it's possible that for whatever reason, if you became a civilizer god king, you needed to have come from the sea, like Quetzalcoatl or Viracocha. That's possible that became a trope and was attached to all the civilizer god kings down the road. We don't really know. Well, the El Nino thing is interesting, but it does.
You know what they say? If Wife Squatch ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. All right. We're going to copy this here link. Right? Put it over here. Is that right? I wonder if that's right. Somebody check that link. Make sure it goes to Flow State's doohickey maflunchy thing. Oh, bother. It won't let me pin it like that, but it will let me pin it like this.
Let me see. I'm just about to open tab.
It'll let me pin from StreamYards, but if I actually type it in, it won't let me pin my own message.
Okay. There we go.
I haven't recently fed my beard a redhead. That's true. Happy fence sitting. Save a cowboy, ride a Sasquatch. All right. We're going to finish this here video. We're going to wrap it up, and then we're going to join Flow State. Anybody who wants to bail out early can. I'm not going to start restreaming on his until around 10:30 Eastern time-ish, 10:45, somewhere around there. Right. No, that's it. That is absolutely it. Did it not unpin it? It should have unpinned it in any event. Actually, that's not going to work at all. I'm going to have to do it over here. We got to do it right, because everything we do sucks.
Does require some assumptions. I mean, either it was the first El Nino that they'd experienced in a very long time, it was a far worse one than normal, or that they had relocated and were therefore hit far harder than they had been in the past. Now, it's still a pretty interesting possibility, but that one I'm kind of more on the fence about, thinking that that's a great example of like a smaller flood and stuff. But I think that the fact that the whole flood myth got tied into the whole thing, thinks this is more attached to the Viracocha Quetzalcoatl thing, and it just got some, maybe there was an El Nino that got mixed up into that myth or something. But the El Nino thing is definitely interesting. I don't find it extremely compelling one way or the other. Ultimately, because they have not found anything for certain at that site, I would lump this into that same category of the King Arthur thing. We don't know. It's interesting. It's a great myth. It ties into other myths in the area, but we just don't know, which makes it great fodder for the alternate history community, which is why I'm really curious as to why I haven't heard about it recently when I started doing research into it. At the very least, it shows that the Quetzalcoatl.
Do what? What?
Oh, I'm eating. Yeah. The other day. Yeah, like 2 days ago. Yeah. No. This is the first one I've had that was this bad, though.
Come on.
Benzo.
The fuck are you talking about?
Having the season.
All right. Whatever.
Pocha myth was something the indigenous people believed in heavily, as this one cropped up twice, and this seems to show up at a lot of different places with different attributes, but some of them the same, particularly coming from the sea, civilizing the area, and something to do with some horribly great deluge. And that really is so weird to me. It's just, how did it get lost like this? It's like you look on YouTube and there's like a traditional Peruvian band by this name, and every now and again you'll find like some 50 view kids type of video that's to teach kids about this myth. But there's nothing about it in the alternate history community anymore, barely at all. And again, you don't really even hear historians talk about it a whole lot. So tell your friends about this.
Yes, tell your friends about this. Now, ladies and gentlemen, in chat, you will find that a link has been pinned to the top. That's where we will be in approximately 15, maybe 20 minutes. And I'm not even sure what we're discussing. As above, so below is the name of the chat. So without further ado, I'm going to wrap this whole thing up. Should we do sunscreen again? I liked it coming in. It wasn't terrible. It is 4 minutes though. We'll just do a standard one. How about that?
Sorry. Good news though. We're gonna have to move the party somewhere a little bit more private, but you're all invited. Lorenzo will give you the details. Yeah!
Step 1, wake up early, gonna rise with the sun. Step 2, get some good, some food in you. Step 3, think real hard about what you wanna be. Step 4, everybody just do your thing.
Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. 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 Wake up, today's gonna be a good day.